What's going on, gang? Kyle Krabs of the Draft Network, joined by Joe Marino, Damian Parson, and Keith Sanchez, the TDN scouting team, here to talk about one of the best prospects eligible for the 2023 NFL draft class, Texas running back Bijan Robinson. And there's no question about the quality of Bijan Robinson as a player, but there is a question of positional value. And this is something that you see teams wrestle with greatly. Sometimes, like in the case of the New York Giants and Saquon Barkley, doesn't matter. And then in other cases, you see players like Derrick Henry slip out of the first round altogether. There's plenty of cases of talented running backs who probably had a strong case for being a top 32 overall player, not getting picked in the top 32 picks. So we are here to explore that debate as it pertains to Bijan Robinson. And I got to kick it to my guy, Keith Sanchez, first. Of course, he's the regional scout with the Texas Longhorns. He and I did a film study on Bijan Robinson on the TDN Premium Discord a couple weeks ago. And boy, oh boy, Keith, was that tape a roller coaster of emotions in the best ways possible. Talk to me about Bijan, what your thoughts are on running back positional value and how you think he can fit into that matrix this year.
Yeah, first of all, we can't just explain Bijan Robinson as a running back, right? Like, he's a dynamic offensive football player. And he brings so many different elements to the game. Like you said, Kyle, when we watched the film, right, some of his best runs were 10-yard runs, him being able to create, able to make what's wrong, make it right. So when you think about that and then you translate it to value, we're talking about, we always hear about NFL coaches and GMs, and they always talk about minimizing the negative plays, right? Turning what's bad, turning into good. And Bijan does that. So for me, I look in the past, right? I look at guys like Saquon Barkley, able to run the New York Giants to a playoff appearance. And then you think about Todd Gurley, right? With the Los Angeles Rams. That was his playoff run, right? That was his Super Bowl run. So when you have those special type of players, those blue chip prospects, man, it's simple. Put them on the football field and let them get after it and make sure that they touch the ball 20 to 30 times a game, because I think they can affect the team in a positive way.
Joe, I want to get your thoughts on the element of what Keith just talked about. Get good players on the field. We talk about draft good players, but when you think about the top of this draft and the teams that do need a running back, and it will have this debate to weigh out, or perhaps even teams that might not have running back be the most obvious need, how do you see this class and the layout of the order impacting Bijan Robinson?
Well, I think each team's going to have to ask themselves questions about where they're at with the quarterback position. Do they like these quarterbacks? What about their defensive line? Do they like these blue chip caliber defensive line? But I think after that is when you start to really get interested in considering Bijan Robinson for all the reasons that Keith just outlined. And I'm not necessarily somebody who loves the idea of a first round running back. I've championed the opposite of that, right? And waiting, and you've seen time after time the running backs being able to be had on day 2 or even later that wind up being impact starters. But I think Bijan Robinson changes that conversation because of the skill set that he offers. And I think about what he can mean to a team that has a young quarterback, to be able to have that type of presence with them in the backfield. I think about teams that have an established quarterback, that have no need there, that are really happy with their direction, and what a player like that could mean for your established veteran to be able to have that type of presence, not just in the run game, but what he can offer in the passing game. And so I think when you look at it through that lens, you become very interested in a lot of different landing spots that would make sense because of what he can mean for your football team overall. And so I do think that Bijan Robinson's talent and skill set changes that hard and fast rule of we don't draft running backs in the first round. Well, this is a different type of cat.
Well, and DP, you're obviously the running back guy here. So talk to us a little bit about when you think about Bijan, the unique components of his skill set versus some of the other backs that have come through in recent years, and even backs that he's sharing this class with this year.
Man, I mean, and Kyle, you look at this is a loaded group of running backs, right? You have kind of, it's like walking into an ice cream store. There is a flavor for whoever walks in there, right? Like, and that's the thing that makes it a little different conversation. For me, like Joe and Keith have already talked about, Bijan, he's, I think, a top 3 player on my board. When people ask me is how many blue chip players do I see in this draft, he's one of the 3. There's only 3 for me. So it's like you look at it and it's like you have that conversation. And when I look at this situation, I'm like, all right, as the running back guy, I'm very honest. Running backs are such a luxury, right? So it's like at the same time, it's like, man, do I draft him top 10 where he's ranked in our boards? Or, you look at teams that are in a good spot that they could draft him, right? You think about Philly. Philly has 2 first-round picks, and then, it just depends on what they do free agent-wise and with some of the expiring contracts. But, man, you think about Jalen Hurts in the backfield with Bijan, and you have Devonta Smith and all the weapons they have. And it's like, this was already the number 1 seed in the NFC. And you add that type of talent that can do everything, pass protect, catch the ball, run the ball, inside and out, all those things, man. Talented guy. It's just all about weighing the pros and cons of, okay, who's on the board? If I need a corner and there's Christian Gonzalez or JPJ or anybody else, or these top corners, do I take Bijan or do I go with what I need on the board? So it's going to be a fascinating development as we get closer and closer to the draft.
I'm glad you mentioned corners because Joe was talking about teams are going to have to evaluate quarterbacks. You're going to have to evaluate your defensive line. I think corner is that other room that could crash the party here as it pertains to Bijan Robinson getting his name called in the top 10 picks in the NFL draft. When you think about the Raiders with Josh Jacobs as an expiring contract, and you think about the Philadelphia Eagles and Miles Sanders as an expiring contract, and you think about the Atlanta Falcons and what they've wanted to be with Arthur Smith as the head coach of the football team versus what they have been, and you've got some young players in some of these spots, players like Zamir White and Tyler Algier as young day 3 running backs, but y'all know what I like to say. Don't let a good player prevent you from drafting a great player, right? And that's where I would really struggle as it pertains to Bijan Robinson because there is this special element of it's the blend. We talk about all the things that he can do, but it's even just his running style for me where you get him in the open field or you get him a crease and the explosiveness that he has to hit that hole, but then the contact balance that he has to earn tough yards and the vision and the anticipation and the way that he sets up second-level defenders, it makes for this really, really rare blend of skills that he can beat you with finesse and he can beat you with power and he can beat you with vision and anticipation. So there's a technical component here. There's a power component here. There's a speed component here. And for me, there's not many players, Dame, I know you said, what, three blue chip players and he's on the cut. He gonna make the cut for me too, really, when it's all said and done. And I think this is the kind of draft class where we've laid out some premium positions that it's not going to meet your traditional norms. Like there's not a lot of slam dunk top of the first round offensive linemen. I guess the question that I would have for whoever wants to take it is we talk about some of these stacked positions. Do you think that helps or do you think that hurts the case of just taking the best player available if it is Bijan Robinson at a devalued position relative to the depth of the corner class and the depth of the defensive line class?
One thing that Dame said that I don't know that I fully agree with is that this running back class is absolutely loaded. I think there's a lot of likable players, but, I think outside of Bijan Robinson, you start to get to Jahmyr Gibbs, and then I think it's a lot of different candidates for RB3. And so I think perhaps, again, a different viewpoint than Dame, I don't necessarily look at this and see a whole lot of guys that I can wait for. If I want to get a running back and I pass on Bijan Robinson, I'm not really excited about what I'm waiting on and getting when I can have Bijan. And so I think from the lens of the running backs class, to me, it helps him because I don't love the depth here. But obviously, I still think the NFL predictably is going to value those premium positions, and it's going to have to be the right team with him on the board.
Dame, I'll let you touch on the depth, and then Keith, I'll let you finish this off here. So, Dame, when you think about the depth of the class, talk to us a little bit about the candidates that you see. And you also mentioned it's kind of an ice cream store situation here, right, where there's different flavors, so there's different skill sets available, whereas Bijan kind of is the collection of all of those skills in one player.
No, 100%. Like it's a lot of names that fit different schemes, right? Like you think about like not just Jahmyr Gibbs, but you think about Zach Evans from Ole Miss. You think about Tank Bigsby. If you're a zone running team and you think about what the Niners were able to find with Elijah Mitchell, you more than likely can kind of get that with Sean Tucker. And, it's a lot of different guys in this class that can do different things. So it's like, if you're the Falcons, Tyler Algier just hit 1,000 yards. What's more dangerous, having, adding Bijan, which is great, or could I get basically kind of, which I've comped him to Alvin Kamara the entire time, Jahmyr Gibbs to add to Tyler Algier, and I got the best of both worlds. And that's kind of where I've always looked at things in terms of valuing the running backs. But like Bijan is no doubt the top guy, but there is a lot of bodies, a lot of talented runners, and that will fit multiple schemes that you can add and just kind of plug and play. We saw that last year with Dameon Pierce from Florida, a guy who didn't have a ton of production, and he gets to Houston, and you have to see just the full skill set of, man, he leapfrogged the veterans that were there, right? So, and he was a late, was a day 3, late day 2 pick somewhere in there. That's kind of what I look at as like, as much as I love Bijan, you will absolutely be able to find guys that will be able to fit your scheme and tote the rock.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna take it from there, DP, because you mentioned one team and the exact team that I wanted to speak about, and that's the Atlanta Falcons, right? Because we talked about being a difference maker type running back, right? Then Joe mentioned having a young quarterback, and the Atlanta Falcons have both of those, right? And we've seen in the past a team that, didn't necessarily draft a premier position in the sense of the fact of them drafting Kyle Pitts, but that was one of the few blue chip prospects in that draft. And I think with the NFC South, it's all but said that Tom Brady is going, right? And then you have, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton combination in New Orleans. And then you have the Carolina Panthers with who knows at this point. If the Atlanta Falcons can start next year off how they started this year running the football, Arthur Smith was in Tennessee with Derrick Henry, and now he gets a different type of runner, right? But a same dominant skill set. I think Bijan with that mix can be pretty good when you think about Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Drake London on the outside.
One thing for sure is this is a storyline to watch because this is one of the best players. This is an elite prospect, best running back we've seen in the last couple of years come through the pre-draft process, and somebody's going to fall in love. The question is how early that will happen. I know all of us here are in love with Bijan Robinson's game, so make sure you hit subscribe on the channel, like this video, get the notifications when we drop all of our latest TDN 100 related content. The January edition is out now with our top 100 prospects eligible for the 2023 NFL Draft. Draft Network, we got you all cycle long, all the way up until April when the draft comes around. So stay plugged in right here with the Draft Network.